No, look, the kids, the 5-year-olds could know every word in this book if they read this book or if you read it to them. They could know every word in that book. By the time they're 5 years old, they could know every word. You say, well, what about like this word wanton? I mean, the Bible defines itself when it says you lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. Well, let me tell you, the Bible just defined itself. It says wanton has something to do with you living in pleasure. And so what is wanton? Wanton is selfishly living in pleasure. Does this make sense to everybody? It just takes a little bit of thought. And of course, then again, the Holy Spirit actually helps you to understand it. But it says, ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. And so you feed yourselves in this life like each day was a feast where the animal is slaughtered for a feast. Back in that time, they would slaughter an animal for a big feast. And when they did, they're going to eat it all up. They're going to consume it all, which means they're going to, they're just, it's like I told them the other day, I forget, I think it was Marco and Mike I was talking to. I said, I can't wait to have a dinner on the grounds again. I want to roast a whole pig. I want all the guys to stay out all night and roast a whole pig. I mean a pig, not a pig. I mean a pig. That's the way we did when we were growing up. We dug that hole and we put all the charcoals and all the stuff in there and put him in there, and then we buried him and we sat out all night. And my daddy told us all kinds of lies. And then we got up the next morning and man, it was just so good. And I want to do that. But you know what? When you do that, you eat it all up. It's not like, oh, let's take home leftovers. You just keep eating until it's all gone. And that's what it's talking about right here. He says, you have nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter. He said, everything's about you being fulfilled. You just keep eating it up. Don't you see, folks, that's the kind of attitude that's running our nation right now. That's the political system that's running our nation right now. When hundreds of congressmen and women go in as normal people like us, and a few years later, 2 or 3 years later, they're millionaires, they're eating it up. They're living deliciously. And so it says, ye have condemned and killed the just. Truth and justice have been irrelevant, and integrity is not considered. Only gain is considered. And he doth not resist you. The poor had no power to fight or to stop you. And again, in this society, you have a rich man and a poor man in some sort of legal battle. What's the chances that the poor man's going to win? Pretty minimal. Pretty minimal. He has no power to fight. So that leads us to verse 7. And I don't know if you can understand the correlation of some of the things that's going on right now, but verse 7 is the encouragement to the poor who have been used and abused. And it's the solution to the problem in our nation right now. Now, the real solution is, as one person put it, if we just brought God back into everything we kicked him out of. If we brought God back into our schools, if we brought God back into our lives, if we really brought God back in. But here's verse 7, it says, be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. You see, everybody that's fighting to get things the way they want it right now, it's mostly the poor are fighting against the rich. The rich are going to win. They just do in this world. But he's saying, watch this, he's saying, be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. All this is going to be taken care of one day. One day, when the Lord comes back, there will be no rich people. He says, be patient, brethren, to the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. You know, the truth is, folks, we can fight and desire to have, and we'll never. It's not going to happen. Or we may get some sort of temporary pleasure. We may get some sort of temporary result. But the truth is, when someone wins and gains power, you know what happens to them? When they have a worldly attitude, you know what they become? They become then the rich and powerful. And so someone else is then persecuted because they're poor. The only answer to this truly is to look to God and say, God, you're coming back. You know what, Lord? This is in you. I was walking last night, and there's some different issues in my life and different things I'm having to deal with. And as I was walking and talking to the Lord, I said, Lord, this thing, it frustrates me, it torments me, it's hard for me. And the Lord said, listen, this is so clear. He said, walk in integrity, do right, and the rest is my business. God made it so clear. You just do right, the rest is my business. And you know what? That's what he's saying right here. He's saying, listen, you just be patient, which means cheerfully endure whatever you're going through, and you treat people right, you act right, and when God blesses you, as he says, he does a diligent man, when he does, you won't mistreat people with the blessings God gave you. And when he comes back, this is all going to be level ground. Except when crowns start to be handed out, I think more are going to be handed out to the poor man. My old preacher once said, he said it actually several times, but he said maybe the greatest man of God, the greatest preacher alive is in some cornfield in some little church someplace that nobody knows. And the truth is, I think we're all going to be amazed when we stand before Jesus, kneel before Jesus, who really is awarded the crowns. Well, one of them might be John Walters. That had nothing. Colby and I, 2 years or 3 years ago, bought him a bed because here's a man 70 years old that's never had his own bed, laying on a mat on the floor. But every day, every time I was there, man, that crippled foot, knotted up, gnarled up foot, he would walk that mountain. He would walk to those services. And then he would stand there and translate in the heat. And as hot and tired as we get preaching, he would get so hot and tired, but he would never give up. And today I heard that one of the boys there got killed. In an accident, one of the boys there, and it threw my soul because Amy told me that that boy was won to the Lord 1 year ago by John Walters. You know what John did? He was patient unto the coming of the Lord. John looked at it and said, behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and that's what he was waiting on. He had long patience for it. Establish your hearts for the coming of the Lord. Throughout history and presently, the rich and powerful have enslaved, cheated, manipulated, and stolen from the poor. But the scriptural answer is to establish your heart. Keep your heart on the Lord. Let him answer. let him answer. And wait patiently on the coming of the Lord. Well, that's first 7 verses of James, and you know why what was happening at that moment that took him into tearing into these rich folks, I don't know. But he did, and so we had to cover those passages of Scripture. So God bless you, and thank you for coming.